Smoak, and we're now joined by the voice of TCU. What a run it's been, Brian. Estridge, Georgia, TCU Monday night, and last night TCU men's basketball with a thrilling win against Baylor at the Farrell Center. You're kind of riding a pretty good life right now.
Hey, man, it feels good. I'll tell you that. It's been a fun ride for this football team. And then, last night to get that win at the Farrell Center. I'm just excited you're going to ask me about basketball, brother. I mean, I've done so many conversations about football that I don't want folks to lose sight of what the Big 12 is doing as far as NCAA basketball is concerned. I mean, this league is stout, is it not?
It's deep as you can possibly imagine.
Yeah. Brian, Baylor fans want to know, though, how many more semesters of eligibility does Mike Miles have?
23. I just checked. So he should be here a while. No, he's a terrific player. And last night was just unbelievable. A career night for him to go. What was it, 433 or I guess or whatever it was. I mean, and to really kind of will this team back from 17 down. But it's more than Mike Miles. I mean, this is a team that only turned it over 7 times. I think it was that has had success. Distributing the basketball with Damian. But I think Damian Ball is really kind of the guy that makes his team go, and they've been good defensively. So, but you know how hard it is to win on the road in the Big 12, and to be able to pull that one out in the Farrell Center, which the Frogs hadn't done in what 4 games? I guess 3 or 4 games. That was a big one.
I thought I saw a note as some of these stats come down. It's the first time that TCU has beaten Baylor, a ranked Baylor team in Waco.
That wouldn't surprise me. I was talking to our friend Pat Nunnally before the game, and he was reminding me of what was the name of the old arena, the Heart of Texas arena, that he and Vinny Johnson combined for 62 one night against TCU. Vinny had 50 and he had 12. That it's always been a rivalry like that. That has been back and forth. There's always something that happens in this game, and so this one obviously that doesn't surprise me. I mean, you look at what Scott Drew has done and his success against TCU over the years. He was like 16-4, I think, wasn't he, against the Horned Frogs? So that stat would not surprise me, David.
Brian, your thoughts on Chris Beard getting let go at Texas? TCU hasn't seen them yet, but it's big news in the Big 12 today.
What took so long? That was my first thought. Was what took so long. I mean, I don't know how you come back from that. I don't know how you continue as a head coach after doing that. I mean, you and I wouldn't be able to keep our job. I know the guys that you guys work with. I mean, we wouldn't still be here. That it didn't surprise me. I think that athletic department's still, trying to find its way. And so let them find their way in the SEC, right?
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly the point. Now, TCU just seems to be just feeding off of everything positive, what they've done, the resiliency, dictating a lot of that game against Michigan. And then when they were tested, they, of course, did very well and bounced right back. The Quentin Johnston dagger was incredible. How have they handled, in your opinion, yet another week of where they are on the national stage?
Smoak, that's a great question. I don't know if we know the answer to that until Monday night. I mean, I tell people this all the time that I'm sure Sonny Dykes has made a mistake, and I guess he did late in that Kansas State game at the goal line. But other than that, I don't know what he's done wrong since he got here. I mean, it seems like he has he's actually punched every button. And done it correctly for this program and for this team here this year. And so, they had a plan going into this week. They had talked to a bunch of folks who had been a part of situations like this before. So it's as organized as I've seen. They feel like they're going to be able to carry it out. And so, I think that it's going to be interesting to see, with the eyes of the nation on them, knowing too this, guys, that they don't have the benefit of sneaking up on Georgia. And I just didn't feel like Michigan knew what they were in for, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they were necessarily overlooking them, but I just don't think that Michigan had the respect for the Big 12 that they should have, nor the respect for for TCU. And some of that, guys, I blame us. I'll be honest with you. I blame all of us who cover the Big 12 because we don't blow the league's horn the way the SEC has media who does that, or the Big 10 who has media who does that, who carry their water for them, and maybe that's because we're just fair. I don't know. But, one of the things that I kept noticing is this narrative as I was doing interviews in Detroit and other places in Michigan. The thing that came up was, this Michigan line is so much bigger than anything you've seen. And, how are you going to handle that? And what do you do about that? And I would remind them that the TCU offensive line was 3/4 of an inch taller and 17 pounds heavier than Michigan's, and it's like, come on, guys, you got to get out of this old narrative and realize what college football is today. The Big 12, do they throw it around? Yes, because they got great skill players. But it's as physical as any league in the country. I just did an interview in Salt Lake City today, and they said, hey, what kind of advice would you give BYU? I said, one is don't believe the hype that this league is not physical. Two is you better improve your depth because it is so physical, you're going to run through players. And so to me, I think that's a message that the Big 12 has to start selling.
No, I'm with you. Everybody there's, obviously a lot of air raid offenses, but people think that means you just throw the ball 70 times a game, that you don't run it well, and that you can't be smash mouth when you need to be. And like those old Baylor teams that a lot of people are kind of, taking parts from, and you see that now spreading across the SEC. Brian, you saw firsthand they could run the ball as well as anybody. They were as physical and nasty as anybody was.
Yeah, look at that Baylor team last year.
Yeah.
I mean, that Baylor team last year was as physical as anybody. And so, there's no question. I mean, you can't tell me Kansas State isn't a physical football team. You just can't tell me that. There was always a level of physical nature with Oklahoma and their offensive line, when they were really good. Oklahoma State's guys fly around and hit you. We know that Iowa State, when Matt Campbell had them good a couple of years ago, how physical were they? So I don't buy into any of that crap. Now, Texas, they're not physical, but that's okay. But everybody else is. And so I think that folks around the country have to realize that.
So you've called a lot of TCU games over the years, but what was that like, the other night to just sit back and watch them in this setting against a team of that caliber, knowing what was at stake and just watching that unfold the way that it did?
I'd be lying to you if I tell you it wasn't exciting. I mean, obviously it was. I mean, you try to stay in the moment. You try to stay professional. You try to, deliver on your job. But there is something special about being in that ball game, and there'll be something even greater in this one. We had a chance to play in the Rose Bowl in 2011, and that was a ton of fun. And this is a program that's been to a bunch of bowls, 19 of the last 22 years or something like that. And those are all big, but this is kind of the big boy. This is where it ends up being. And so, I feel very blessed because there's a lot of play-by-play guys who are better than I am and much more deserving. But I'm just going to try to stay within the game and deliver on this one, and hopefully folks in the and go, I could follow the ball. I know what he was doing.
You're being very humble, and that's the way it is. We appreciate you doing that. Again, Brian Estridge with us on 365 Sports, voice of TCU.
Yeah, Brian, Sonny Dykes made a kind of, or I guess it wasn't Sonny Dykes, but that Kirby's Front was asked about the construction of the rosters and how these two teams are so different. And he's like, look, I don't look at that. And it's just about how you are at the end of the day, which was his very coach speak answer. But it can be intimidating if you only look at recruiting rankings. But does the portal and the fact that TCU is now kind of decorated with, Max Duggan being the Heisman runner-up, you have the Thorpe Award winner, you've got a lot of things going on there, that maybe those things kind of balance itself out because everybody's contributed, and we've seen how people are between the stripes right now.
What it proves, guys, I think, is that those guys who do those ratings out of high school may not know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about it this way. When you look at TCU, there will be more players drafted. Are we recording this? I want to record it. Can we record this?
Are. Yeah.
Paul, hit record. Because there will be more players drafted from TCU than Georgia this year. You look at a first-round draft pick at wide receiver in Quentin Johnson. You got one of the early running backs in Kentrey Miller that will go. I mean, there's just talent around this team. You got 5 guys along the front of the offensive line. 5 guys. All 5 of those guys will be in an NFL camp. I'm not telling you they're going to be drafted, but all 5 of them will be in an NFL camp. You got Dylan Horton, who had 4 sacks against Michigan. His stock is rising tremendously. You got 2 corners. One of them you guys know quite well, and Trey Hodges-Tomlinson, that are, those are 2 early round draft picks at corner. Stop me. You know what I'm saying? Hey, come on now. At some point, those grades coming to high school don't matter. If you want to talk grades, let's look at what the NFL guys are saying about next level players. And right now, TCU is the one that's got as much as anyone that's playing in this college football playoff. So, yeah, I as far as the construction of the rosters, okay, fine. I mean, TCU, I think you got to give their coaches credit and go back to Gary Patterson's staff to being able to evaluate talent, don't you? That you found these guys that were at Mount Enterprise, as you and I have talked before, who can come in and be a star at running back for you. And so, and then you do dot it with some transfer portals. But listen, that's today. I'm trying not to live in the past. I mean, today is the transfer portal and it's the NIL. And if TCU had to go out and kind of fill some holes with transfer portal guys, and they fit into what Sonny Dykes was preaching, Jared Wiley at tight end, Josh Newton at one of the corners. I mean, if those guys come in and actually make a difference, well, more power to them. To me, that's called good coaching.
DeMarcado was really good in that game with Michigan. Of course, TCU had 263 yards rushing, and Miller went out. And obviously, you mentioned him. He's the young man that played at a Class 2A school in Mount Enterprise in East Texas. Anything yet on where he is when it comes to Monday night?
Here's the one thing I will say, and you guys know this. Sonny Dykes is transparent. He is honest. He doesn't play games for the injury report or the 2 deep. Jim Harbaugh don't even give you a 2 deep. He doesn't play any games with that crap. And he said that Kentrey Miller is questionable, and I have to take him at his word. Now, some would say, well, listen, that's kind of dodging the question, but I think the evaluation will continue throughout the week on Kentrey Miller. Now, knowing Kentrey the way that we all do, I think he plays. I think if they don't want him to play, they better have already taken his helmet, because if that helmet makes its way to California, it's going to be on his head. He's going to figure out a way to play. So I think in the end he plays. Now, will he be 100%? I don't know. Hey, guys, how about the story, though, of Amari DiMarcado, the backup running back from Inglewood? He could see SoFi Stadium from the middle of his street. His dad drives a bus at LAX. This is a guy who wanted nothing more than to get back home and show his folks one more time that he made it. Here he had 2 Division I offers out of high school, Army and Navy. So his grades weren't an issue. But so he decided to go to Saddleback Junior College to get bigger and faster and stronger. Gets an offer from TCU, has a 3.77 GPA with 2 master's degrees, and he's going home for the national championship. Isn't that what college football is all about?
Yeah, to me, actually, the score will matter because that's the national champion, but it's the stories behind the teams that, whether they go 0-10 or they have a chance to win the national championship, that have always been my favorite part of the covering the games or watching the games.
Yeah, no question. And you got great storylines. I mean, look at the 2 those are unlimited storylines that come out of those two great leaders that have had their trials and tribulations leading into this ball game, who are, now you got players on both sides that would run through a brick wall for both of them. I was so glad that both of them got to go to New York. You guys will laugh at this. Sonny the other day said that we asked him, hey, did you have any chance to spend any time with Stetson and Kirby? And he said, yeah, at the Heisman Trophy ceremony, although those 2 started talking strategy and ball in the middle of the conversation. He goes, that's all they want to do, is they want to talk about football. So he laughed at that apparently the Stetson's a lot like Max too, that he just, he loves the game. He's a student of the game. And you can tell it by the way he plays.
So, Brian, just looking back at that Michigan game, obviously Georgia is a team loaded with talent, just like Michigan was. But, in terms of the matchup, obviously they'll come with their wrinkles. TCU will have theirs. But just, eye to eye, what do you look at as far as the Bulldogs go, and what stands out to you in terms of this matchup?
Yeah, Craig, thing that stands out to me is the D-line for Georgia. I mean, good gracious, those guys are good. And you know, Michigan's was big, K-State's is big, Texas Tech we thought was one of the better ones in the Big 12 this year. But these cats, good gracious, man, it's a different level. They're big, they're fast, they're strong, they get upfield, they apply tremendous pressure, you know, and they kind of protect that back end. If you notice the last couple of weeks, teams have had some success throwing the football on them, but they've done it. You know, those have been two pretty good football teams they faced. But, you know, I think that's what really stands out is how good they are along that defensive line. And maybe that's because it's the hardest position in college football to recruit. But that really stands out. I mean, this is a Georgia team that won't be in awe of TCU's speed. I think Michigan was a little bit not prepared for it. Georgia's going to be just as fast as TCU. Maybe, you know, overall team speed, TCU may have a little something there. It's a big old offensive line with a great offensive line coach in Stacey Searles, who I think is one of the best O-line coaches in the country. So that kind of stands out to you. And then you got Stetson. I mean, a guy, you know, who he's not all that big. He's probably not all that strong compared to other guys, but he makes all the throws they need him to make. He can move in the pocket and buy himself some time. So, I mean, it looks on paper like the best team in the country. I mean, you know, I don't know how you can say anything different. I mean, they're pretty impressive just to watch them on tape.
It's amazing, those two quarterbacks, the stories, as you mentioned, DeMarcado among so many others. The story, TCU, the win last night in basketball, playing for the national title Monday, and having themselves a run with what they're doing at TCU with Donati as the AD, and, of course, with Sonny Dykes and also Jamie Dixon. Brian, thank you very much for your time. I know you'll enjoy the moment and take a deep breath and enjoy that air and the stadium inside, I guess. And
sort
then,
of both.
Yeah,
inside,
kind of both.
outside,
Yeah. And then good luck, man. We appreciate you and enjoy the moment again. Enjoy the journey.
Gentlemen, you guys are my faves. I enjoy the time here today. Thank you very much.
You too. That's the voice of TCU last night at the Farrell